I've realized that not many people are really into listening to podcasts or even, if you're not into it. And the reason why I know this, because I certainly wasn't into it before I started my own podcast. So I had to go figure it out, and it's not the most intuitive thing where I can just send everybody a link to iTunes. So what I figured I'd do is make a quick video on how I listen to podcasts in case you aren't into it. And the reason why I think this is useful is that, and this really has nothing to do with me. I think the Dialed In podcast is really good, and it's I have sort of lucked into having Bryan Orr produce it for me, who's a legit audio engineer, podcaster extraordinaire, I guess you could say. And so I basically just sit down and start talking, and he makes it happen, and the production value is fantastic. So. And I think the message is good. I usually don't sort of hype up my YouTube videos or website or anything like that. That's sort of a labor of my own love, and I've kind of thrown that stuff together with my own flair of organization. But the podcast I think is really, really good. So I wanted to take you guys through quickly how I would listen to it. So the first thing you would do is, not Jing, iTunes, is you could simply open up iTunes, and on your computer. You could do this on Windows, you could do this on a Mac, and you go to the store, and then in the top right, just type in Obsessed Garage Dialed In. Of course, the podcast name is Dialed In, Some Obsession Required, and then boom, here you go. You got episodes, the latest episode through the old episode. So, if you wanted to see it all, you could click See All, and we have I don't know how many episodes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 14 episodes, and we'll keep producing more. I'm gonna have Jimbo Balaam, who's another podcaster who has I think it's the Auto Detailing Podcast. But on your computer, we can choose the latest interview with Larry, and you just simply click play, and it'll show up in the top of your player, and you can start listening. So what we would do it. Simple way to do it is to go on your computer, pull up iTunes, download iTunes if you don't have it, and listen this way. Another way to listen on your computer is if you Google Audio Boom. This is our hosting service. I think that's what it is. Audio Boom, Dialed In Podcast. And it should pop up first, and you could listen this way. And this is the place that I normally link. To be honest with you, I would rather you go into iTunes, because I guess we get more credit that way. It makes us look better that way. But this is our sort of hosting site. This is the easiest place for me to link to the podcast, and then of course you can click on any episode and listen. Right off the bat. You can like it, you can share it, you can do whatever you want. If you want to share on Facebook or any of that stuff, certainly that helps us out. So that's one way to do it. So you have iTunes, and you have Audio Boom. And then if you're really, which is, I think the rankings change every day, but if we go back to the store, our podcast is in the games and hobbies category. This took me forever to figure this out. And then you go to automotive, and you can learn all about the different automotive podcasts. If you're interested in either top episodes or top podcasts, you would simply go here, and oh shoot, this is because of the Larry episode. But this changes, I think, daily. I might be making that up. But ones that I listen to, occasionally I listen to Smoking Tire, sometimes Adam Carolla's. Cars, yeah, it's kind of cool if there's somebody that's been interviewed, like Todd Cooperrider, Larry Cosilla, guys have been interviewed on that. I think I'm probably going to go on that. This is an interview show, very traditional, sort of entrepreneurial interview style, where there's a punchline at each point. So if you're not into that, you might want to skip it. And of course, Ammo, he'll be releasing another episode soon, so I'm sure he'll jump back to the top. those are the ones that I listen to. I would encourage you to go to Larry's and listen to from start to finish. Oh, and Jimbo Balaam, the auto detailing podcast, I also listen to as well, which is good. Especially if you're in the business, there's lots of cool stuff on there. Well, I guess it's not really cool. Sorry, Jimbo, but it's awesome if you're a nerd like the rest of us detailers. So that's how you get in on your computer. And you can do that through through iTunes. Just download it, and you can do that through Windows or OS, Mac OS. Here's my iPhone screen, which I'm going to share with you and show you how to use and listen on your iPhone to the Dial In podcast. And then you'll notice that we have we have the podcast app, which is here. And so the podcast app is native to, it's kind of like iTunes and some other apps. The App Store are native to the iPhone, and so you would either install it if you've deleted it or restore it from your connecting your phone to iTunes. So the podcast app should be somewhere in your phone, and if it's not, just reinstall it. If you're an Android user, I apologize. I don't know how to do that. I don't use inferior technology in my life, so I'm just messing with you. I know some of you Android guys are super passionate about why you won't use the best, but don't unsubscribe to me just because of your inferiority complex. Again, relax. So when you open up the podcast app, you would go to search, and you start by typing in Obsessed Garage. And before you even get through Garage, notice we have dialed in Some Obsession Required. So click on that. And then notice at the top here you have these 3 different sections. So you have all podcast episodes and podcast. For some podcasts, I always prefer to skip right to podcast. That way, you won't have a bunch of other stuff in there. Luckily, I'm the only dialed in guy around, Obsessed Garage dialed in guy. So I usually just click on podcasts and then choose to select dialed in. And so naturally, when you open it up, if you've never been here before, then it would say subscribe. So I'd appreciate it if you click subscribe, and then and you'll be subscribed until you click unsubscribe. And then you'll notice you have all the episodes here, so they go from newest released to oldest. And so we have episode 14 through 1, 1 actually being the first Cars and episode, but that's the way iTunes sorts it. There's probably a way to change that. But this is kind of how I'm used to it. And so let's say you wanted to listen to the Larry Kosilla and the MONYC story. You have a couple of choices. You can just click on it, and notice at the bottom here, it has this is the player that always shows up at the bottom of your screen, and you can expand it. And then in the top right is where you can minimize it. But now now the episode is playing. And I don't have any volume on here, but let me see. I don't know. Since I'm screen capturing, I'm not sure how that works. But the episode, you pause and play it simply through the podcast app. You can fast forward 15 seconds at a time by clicking the 15-second button, or you can do some high-speed scrubbing by clicking and dragging. See the purple line up there in the middle of the screen? We can high speed scrub to whatever portion or point of the episode we want to get to. You also have 1, 1.5, 2, 1/2, and again 1 times, so you can adjust the speed of the podcast. You can also share it. So if you wanted to share it as a text message or mail or whatever other app, like I use the Gmail app, you can post it to Facebook. So you can do whatever you want. You can airdrop it to your MacBook, or I'm not sure what the copy the link does. because iTunes isn't very shareable. That's one of the deficiencies of it. And so we have that option. Another cool thing, if you like to listen to sort of the radio or something at night, you can set a sleep timer to where in 30 minutes the thing will automatically turn off. You could choose when the episode ends, or you can just turn it off. And so you have those options, and then bottom right you can download the episode and do some other things. So when you're back on the main sort of page, the main screen for the podcast, notice the little cloud here. I could choose to click and download the episode. The reason why you would download these episodes is if you were getting on a plane, or you didn't have service, or you wanted to download while you're on Wi-Fi because you don't have an unlimited plan like I do. Then you could download the episodes, which is a nice way to be able to listen while you're not using cellular service or using up some of your data capabilities. Then once the podcast is part of your podcast, if you click the My Podcast section here in the bottom, My Podcasts, notice here these are the ones that I listen to. I try listening to the startup podcast, but this self-help crap I'm just not interested in. So let me delete this. Get this off of my decks here. So delete that, and then then I have just the few episodes that I'm interested in. I don't know how this downloading thing works, but it does download new episodes. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's somewhere in the settings where you can adjust which episodes automatically download, and then you have a recently played playlist. But again, let's say we wanted to listen to something from Matt Farah, The Smoking Tire. I would always go, so you have this feed and you have unplayed. So you have both of these things you can toggle back and forth. I always go feed, that way I can, because a lot of times I want to go back to the beginning and I want to listen to sort of older episodes and then start and work my way through the complete set. When you have unplayed, there might be some episodes in there that aren't in sequence. So I always tend to click on this feed option. And so if you haven't listened to any of our podcasts, go feed and then scroll to the bottom to start at the beginning. And then you simply click, and then the player starts playing. And so, that's pretty simple, I think. And then up here in the top right, you can click on My Podcast to go back. And you could, if you wanted to add more podcasts, you could click the add, or just search for a new one and then subscribe to it. And just because you can be subscribed to podcasts that aren't in this My Podcast sort of playlist area. But anyway, that's how I do it on the iPhone. Again, I'm not sure about the Android app option. Now, I know there's some apps that allow you to listen to podcasts, but iTunes is sort of the standard on how you listen to this stuff. So I hope that was helpful. If you're not a podcast listener, then maybe it'll save you some time. If you are a podcast listener, go listen to our podcast. I think it's pretty good. Anyway, thanks for watching this, and as always, stay tuned for more crazy stuff. Because what happens when the force pulls you back, your foot naturally comes off the gas. You have to keep your foot to the floor.